do any repair work at the liquor store.
Yeah, we're not even closed Sundays anymore.
Yeah, I went, I had to stop in there last Friday. My supplies were getting a little bit low. Of course, I went at 5:30 after I got out of work, and there was, man, was it packed in there. But I do have to say, they've got things done up pretty safely for the employees there with protective windows and all that stuff. I don't think you could do much more.
No, I mean, take every precaution we can and try to encourage other people to wear masks too. That's a little bit of a hit and miss, but we put some signs up on it. So
Yeah, I kind of struggle with that. We went into Menards and Deanna had me masked up, and we walked in and there was like maybe 1 out of 20 people wearing masks.
I went to Virgin's last weekend or on Friday to get a plant for my daughter. I masked up. I made my grandson wear a mask. He's looking at me like I'm a fool. I said, no, we're not.
And it's interesting, they're saying that a lot of the masks are helping to not pass on. It's not so much not getting, it's more not passing on. So it is really it's a non-selfish thing to do to wear them.
Well, my son's significant other has a PhD in public health and works at the CDC in Atlanta. And he's on there, he's on the CDC coronavirus task force.
Really?
Yes. And he said, he told me, wear a mask.
Well, that's probably good enough for me. It's just kind of nice to hear from real people. Everything's from online and from television. You don't know quite what to believe and not. It's nice to hear something from a real human.
He's a real person with real education.
Well, we're at 7:30. Or anybody else we're expecting, Vernell?
Helen, is that you that called in?
Yep, Helen's here.
Okay, we should be good to go, Mr. President.
Hello, Helen.
Good morning.
Well, welcome you all to the second Zoom meeting of the DL Public Utilities Commission. Call the meeting to order. And the first thing is the consideration of the agenda. Any questions on the agenda? If not, I would accept a motion to approve the agenda as is.
Suki moves to approve.
We have a motion and a second from Helen.
Yep.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Let me double check here, Mr. President. Because we do have to take roll call votes on all of our actions, correct?
we do.
Okay, I'll list the names and then you guys can take the votes. Sinclair?
Aye.
Tucker?
Aye.
Suki?
Aye.
Perkins?
Aye.
Foltz?
Aye.
You're good to go, Mr. President.
All righty, we'll move on to routine business. Any additions or corrections to the routine business? A motion to approve routine business.
So moved.
I have a motion by Suki. Do we have a second?
Well, I think the motion was actually by Tucker maybe and
No, that was.
Perkins, and I'll second.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, Mr. President, I'll call the roll for you. Foltz?
Aye.
Perkins?
Yes.
Suki?
Yes.
Tucker?
Yes.
Sinclair?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And do we have any public or citizen items?
We do not, Mr. President. We're good to go this month.
Do we know if we ever had anybody listening in on these?
I don't know. Carrie, do you have any input back from YouTube on people watching or?
Yes.
Tucker?
Yes.
Sinclair?
Yes.
We've had people watch before, but not during the PU meetings.
More the council meetings, I suspect.
Right.
Okay. Well, we'll go right on to financial reports with a new financial reporting person.
Yes, I'd like to introduce Heidi Osley, our new finance officer. She started April 20th, I believe is when she started. So Heidi, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Heidi Osley. If you hear a little boy chirping in the background, that's my 9-year-old. So just ignore him if you would, please. Yeah, so grew up kind of just a little about me. I'll give you a little of my background so you can kind of get to know me a little bit. So on a farm between New York Mills and Deer Creek. So familiar with this area. It's kind of home for me. Live in Perm right now. I've got a background in accounting, went to Minnesota State University Moorhead, got my bachelor's there, and then worked for the North Dakota State Auditor's Office, auditing the North Dakota University system. So NDSU, UND, Mayville, Bismarck, Minot, all those colleges. And then moved down to the Twin Cities area. Gabe, quiet. Moved down to the Twin Cities area and worked as an auditor down there for cities and school districts. And then started my career in municipal government. So started working for the city of Mound, then was finance director for the city of Excelsior. Moved back up north when I met my now husband and stepson, and worked for Cass County Health and Human Services as their business manager. And then most recently for the city of Sartell. So kind of a well-rounded background, and I'm excited to be in DL. Excited to work with all you.
We're happy to have you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just a
So
couple
you're-
of, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, just a couple of items to note on the financials, looking at the sales and everything from the impacts of COVID-19. April electric sales was down about 52,000, but we were still ahead of April of 2017 sales. Water and sewer sales were down just a little bit, but not a lot, but revenues were still up in both those utilities. And we've actually starting to see the pumping rate come back on the water in the last week or 10 days or so. So things are starting to ramp back up for us. As things get released here, sales will come back up. Wholesale power costs should be down at least or greater than the 52,000 or less in sales. So far we're riding this thing out pretty good.
Anything else on financial reports? Anybody questions? Then we will move on to it. Do we need to approve the financial reports?
No, we're good. Oh, one other thing, if I may note, Mr. President, is on a sad note, Pam's mother passed away this past weekend.
Oh,
You know, she's been taking care of her and going down and visiting her a lot. And just wanted to share that with you. So keep Pam in our thoughts and prayers, and tough way to start a retirement, but we'll be thinking of Pam.
can we send something to her? I'm not sure what the protocol is there.
Yeah, we've got a card floating around the office for her that everybody's signed, and we'll make sure that we get some arrangements sent to her.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to hear that. Well, let's move on to action items. Got a request for bids.
Yes, the first one is going to be the electrical work for burying that underground, or putting that overhead primary and secondary on Westlake Drive underground. So we've been working with our electrical engineer, DGR of Rock Rapids, Iowa, to put this package together. They've got the specs ready to go. They want to advertise for bid. So we're requesting approval to advertise for bids. Bids will be due June 3rd, and then we'll bring this back to the commission in June for approval and hopefully start construction sometime in early July.
Can I ask a question about that project? Just more nosiness, but I mean, what's the timeline now? I mean, all I know is what I saw in the paper, I guess, that it's, it's going to eminent domain. So is the timeline all changed?
Else, you want to kind of update them on that part of it?
I can take a stab at it, but Pratt, are you on the call?
Yeah, okay, you see me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, the schedule did get pushed, GL. Two primary reasons. One was MnDOT determined that they were going to do a phase 1 archaeological study for this project, which took me completely by surprise, being it was a fully developed corridor. But be that as it may, that was their directive. So we'll be starting that archaeological study, or I should say MnDOT and their consultant will be starting the archaeological study here probably in the next couple weeks, I'm hoping. We found out about that late last fall. It was too late to do it. You have to have thawed summer-like conditions for that. And then of course the second part is what you outlined is we're still wrestling with about a dozen or so property owners have engaged an attorney. There's about another 10 or so, maybe another dozen that just have not signed off on the right of way. And so we've got over half the folks along there, well over half, that have agreed to the right of way that we believe we have through there. So the action that the county is taking right now is they filed a quiet title action to try to resolve the issue. And that'll of course take some months to work through. If all goes as planned, we've left ourselves enough room that if the quiet title doesn't go favorably for us, that we then would move to eminent domain, but we are not in eminent domain at this point. The end goal here being that we would start the project as early as possible in 2021 and try to have it wrapped up in the first half of the summer.
Is that still realistic with all this court stuff and all that, or is it going to get drug out? In your opinion?
No, we think actually, I mean, to your point, GL, we've thought through, we think we've thought through all the scenarios, and where if one thing doesn't work out, then we go to this, and we've sort of backed into the schedule on a hopefully a worst case scenario basis, which would lead us to resolving it by early winter, allowing us still to get it bid, go through the federal approvals because we have federal funding and the county has federal funding on this. So it is a laborious task to say the least, but we think that no, we can still have this launched by early spring next year. We feel pretty.
Okay. Thank you for the update.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? And I would accept a motion on that item.
Tucker here, so moved.
Suki seconds.
Vernell, call for a roll call.
Very good. Tucker,
Yes.
Suki,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Foltz,
Yes.
Sinclair.
Yes.
Very good. Motion carries, Mr. President. We can move on.
Thank you. Extension of cold weather rule relating to COVID-19.
Yes, some of you may recall in the special commission meeting we had back in March, we originally extended the cold weather rule protections until May 13th. That would be tomorrow. So far, the peacetime emergency is still in place from the governor. We had a conference call with the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission, Department of Commerce folks a couple of weeks ago, and they would really like us to extend this at least through the duration of the peacetime emergency. So how I have this worded in here is we'll take it in small bites. We'll extend it until June 12th or the end of the peacetime state of emergency, whichever occurs first. I would anticipate we may be bring this back in June again, but I don't want to let this get too far out there. So far, we've been doing really well. People have been calling and making arrangements, and I looked at our aging report Amy sent me last week, and we're not doing too bad at all. We've got one commercial customer in a vacant building that we're going to have to deal with, but otherwise everybody else has been really good for us. So doing this to keep peace in the house of the state of Minnesota so they don't take any action legislatively to force us to do this. So we're recommending we extend the cold weather protections until June 12th.
Any questions? Otherwise, I'd accept a motion.
Tucker, so moved.
Perkins second.
Motion and a second. Vernell, can you do the roll call?
Yes, sir. Perkins,
Yes.
Foltz,
yes,
Sinclair,
Yes.
Tucker,
Yes.
Suki.
Yes.
Very good.
And we'll move on to the quotes on the cold storage building.
Yes, the cold storage building is for storage space at E2Q. When the chem plant went away, we lost some of those structures out there. We lost some of our storage capacity. So this was in the construction contract. Rob went out and got quotes and bids for this building. Got them from Petto and Foltz. Foltz was the low bid. And Felt is going to do some plumbing work for us. Mark's Electric, some electrical, and driveway service is going to do the paving out in front and do the driveway to the street. So the total cost for Foltz building and the additional work is $258,097. We put some contingencies in there at 10% because there is some plumbing that we may end up having to do in that building yet. So our total estimated cost is $283,907, and we have $360,000 in allowance in the construction budget. So we're well under the mark. So requesting approval to have Foltz building and the subcontractors complete that cold storage building for us.
Suki moves.
Perkins second.
Motion and a second. Vernell, can you do the roll call, please?
Foltz?
should I refrain from voting?
Yes.
Doesn't matter.
Kelsey,
Yes.
please note that Foltz abstains. Sinclair?
Yes.
Tucker?
Yes.
Suki?
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
Very good. Motion carries, and thank you, Helen.
And the next item D, request approval to dispose of equipment and advertise for sale of old semi-trailer.
Yes, years ago, we had a semi-trailer donated to us for storage of Christmas decorations. Since the new warehouse was built, that is no longer needed. So Andy is requesting that we get approval to sell that old semi-trailer, clean up the yard a little bit, and give us some more storage space on site. So what we'll do is we'll advertise this in the local paper, take sealed bids on it, probably for a month or so, and then see what kind of a sealed bid we have and let the highest bidder get it. I don't have any idea what the value is on it. It's probably not a lot because it's a pretty old rundown trailer, but that's what we're looking for.
Hope somebody takes it.
Exactly. Hey, Gio, M-State might need that for the driver's training
No,
course.
Don't go there. Don't go there.
Man, I should have just.
Junk on our own. We don't need more junk.
Very good. So we're looking for the approval, Mr. President.
We need a motion.
So move, Tucker.
Second, Suki.
We have a motion, a second. Roll call vote, please.
Tucker,
Yes.
Suki,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Foltz,
Yes,
Sinclair.
Yes.
Very good.
We are really getting good at this, people.
Absolutely.
Well, we don't want to get too good at it, though.
So,
Okay. Item E. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's the request to approve a donation of $2,500 to the purchase of flower pots for the downtown area. You know, with a lot of the businesses being shuttered downtown because of COVID, a little bit tight on cash flow. So normally the chamber and a few other people would go around and collect donations for doing the flower pots downtown. And Kelsey, you might have a little bit more insight. Can you share what you know about this with us?
Yeah, sure, commissioners. So I think you guys know Patty LaBar. She usually goes around and does all the donations for the flower pots. The liquor store always contributes a little bit, but this year she's concerned about going and hitting up a lot of these businesses. A lot of them have already agreed to their contributions. They've actually stepped up and just reached out to her and said that they will still contribute. And then Lake Shirts and Mark Fritz, they stepped up and they're donating $10,000 to it this year to get it done. There's still a gap of about 5,000 or 7,000 that they've asked the city to cover. So what we're asking public utilities for is $2,500, and then the city will cover the remaining 2,500 or 4,500 gap, whatever there ends up being, based upon what we get for donations.
Thank you, Kelsey. Any questions on the request? So this would not be something that will continue necessarily. This is something, a stopgap in the meantime.
That's what I envision, yes.
Okay. Motion to approve.
Suki moves to approve. I think they're really terrific to see those downtown, and I think it'll be especially meaningful this year.
Yeah, Tucker second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Sinclair,
Yes.
Tucker,
Yes.
Suki,
Yes.
Perkins,
yes,
Foltz.
yes,
Motion carries, Mr. President.
Thank you. Well, that was good. We went through a lot of items there in a short amount of time. I thank everybody for their focus. The next is General Manager's report.
Yes, I did include the Missouri River and Western Min notes from the April meeting. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at that, but just approved a recommendation of the Finance Committee on that credit swap that was done in the end of March. We reviewed the auditor's report. We talked about the strategic business issues for the rest of the year. We did the resolution to ratify that interest rate swap, which was just a technicality and approval. We moved some money back from Missouri River to the books of Western Minnesota. Basically, we do that to fulfill some of the covenants that are required on that interest rate swap. Provided the meeting resolution to do the annual meeting by webinar, which was last week. I don't know if any of you get to sit in and had a chance to sit in on that. We went through that in about 2 hours. It was unfortunate we couldn't get together in person down there because that's usually a really good meeting. Talked about member cyber services. Missouri River is looking at providing cybersecurity services to the membership for smaller members that do not have an IT department. And approved a change order with Voith for some work at Red Rock Hydro. That's progressing nicely. We're still hoping we can get together down there later in August for the grand opening and the dedication of that. And we're still looking at the proper allocation, how we calculate Missouri River's carbon footprint for what may be a state or federal mandate for reducing carbon in the coming years. So they're working on that. That'll impact our Bright Energy Choices program, but it'll probably be a net benefit to our customers because I think our carbon footprint is going to go down. And just as a side note, they didn't mention availability of running of Laramie River Station for the month of March and April, but most of January and all of February. The only reason Laramie River Station ran was 1 week for function or critical testing that they need to do once a year. Otherwise, there's been enough wind energy and solar energy in the market, and the load has been low enough because of the weather and COVID-19 related that they have not had to run Laramie River Station. So also saw yesterday that GRE is going to close Coal Creek Station in North Dakota in 2022 and 2023. That's going to be a big rotating generation facility that comes offline that may have negative impacts for the upper Midwest. So we'll see how that goes. That's all I have on the Missouri River Board report, unless there's any questions, Mr. President.
What was their reason in closing that? Is it just the fact that it's not going to be viable in the future, or?
Economics, and Great River's got a really aggressive clean energy program. I think they want to be carbon free by 2040. So they're going to do that. And they've got one coal-fired power plant they're going to convert to natural gas, and that's part of their plan too. But seems to me Coal Creek's 1,100 megawatts, and that's a big facility. That was a big deal when that was built in the 1970s. So it's 40 years old, getting to the end of its life cycle. So they're gonna shutter it.
Interesting. Yeah, I did sit in on that meeting, and it was, it's kind of difficult when you don't know all of the stuff that's going on. It's challenging to not actually be there in person.
It is that you kind of lose that social network to ask other people about what does this actually mean, or
Right.
how does it all tie together. So hopefully next year we'll get back and be back in person and have a good swing at it again. So if I may move on to the reliability benchmark.
I have one quick question for now. Sorry to drag this on. So I saw in the news that they're trying to, they'll sell that plant or give it away. Do you think anybody will actually pick it up?
No, I think the reason they want to give it away is if they can give it away, they don't have to do decommissioning costs on it.
Right. No, I got that out of it too. I figured that, but I just didn't know if, I mean, it's got zero value in the marketplace is what you're saying, or relatively so.
Well, at $22, $25 crude oil, it's going to be pretty tough.
Yeah.
If crude comes back, Basin may be interested in it because of serving energy in the Bakken. That'll be the only thing that may be an interesting component of that, is if Basin needs additional capacity, which up until the collapse of crude oil prices, they have. So a lot of that's going to depend, I think, on crude oil prices and what happens in the Bakken. If that energy load, electric load comes back in the Bakken, they may be interested in part of that for serving their load in the Bakken.
Thank you.
You bet.
And it's okay to ask questions, GL. You don't have to apologize for that.
If we get too efficient at this, everybody's going to expect this all the time. It sets a pretty high standard for everybody.
I don't necessarily need that reputation.
Oh, okay. You've always run efficient meetings, Mr. President. Come on now.
But we also have to have informative meetings. So
absolutely.
I did. Yeah, I saw that in the news the other day, and it kind of hit me. I figured, well, I just kind of not knowing the details, but I figured what was going on there because I heard exactly what you said. They're converting one to natural gas, and I just figured, well, that's what's going on. But
yeah, good question, Jill.
Absolutely.
Like what they say, 700 employees. I mean,
yes, I'm sure of that. Yes.
Wow. Well, it certainly is a change in our world, and not going to slow down anytime soon.
Right.
Sure.
Let's move on to the next one, Vernell.
Very good. I just included that APP reliability benchmark report. I'm not going to go through that in any detail. Just provided that for your information. It actually shows that we do a very good job of reliability. So that's kudos to Andy and his crew for putting a good system together and keeping that tight and in good condition. We had a couple tree incidents last year and some other outages, critical caused outages I thought might ding us on that, but in the long run, we show very, very well on that report. So it compares us to by region and by utility size. So if you get a chance, just take a look through that and become somewhat familiar with it, because it does give some pretty good information about how we stack up to our peers.
Well, it is outstanding. I mean, you look at how much better we are than the average, and I think it's important that we have Andy echo that to the whole staff there, because it's not just the people working on the lines, it's everybody putting this together and making it so good. So Andy, please make sure you pass our appreciation on to your team.
Yeah, and thanks to Bridget too. She puts a lot of work in putting this report together and sending this in to APPA. So big thanks to her for doing this as well.
I first of all, thank you for all your work on this and great job. I mean, it's obviously a lot of data here, but if there was a way to summarize this and get a few data points and put an article in the paper, I think it would be.
Yeah,
I think it would
That's
be
a great idea.
a good PR thing, and just shows the reliability and where we sit with compared to others. But I think anytime you can do stuff like that, it helps when you have to drive your point home that we are a benefit to the city in multiple ways.
Great point, GL. Yeah, it's easy to complain when your power's out, but you don't often get a chance to rejoice in the fact that your power is very rarely out.
Right. Right. Amen.
And let's see, our next agenda is
item C, update on the strategic planning. So we had May 20th scheduled for strategic planning for the Public Utilities Commission and staff. It ain't going to happen. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen. So I talked to Marcy Douglas about this. Missouri River is just really going to start bringing people in sometime next week. And they're going to phase that in over 4 to 6 weeks of bringing people back in the office. Marcy's been working remotely from home in North Dakota. Her mother's 83 and lives with her. And I don't think it's real fair to bring Marcy back down into a spot where she runs the potential of catching this thing and then taking it back home. So we're going to defer this, but we'll bring it back up sometime in the fall, possibly set some dates in the fall. Look at that again. I know fall is tough because of hunting. But right now is just not a good time to take a look at getting this thing scheduled. So I apologize. We've been trying to get this in for over a year now, and we're struggling to get a date for it. So possibly sometime later this year.
Thank you, Vernell. And department reports. Andy.
All my department reports in the packet. If you have any questions on, let me know. I'll pass your thoughts along to the crew. And yeah, working on getting jobs lined up for the year still. Next one now is Long Lake after Westlake Drive's pretty much ready. Yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know.
Andy, if I can jump in on that, I was put a little bit of a list together, just some things that we have to go through and work Andy's got on the docket for this year. I mean, we think it would be relatively slow given the conditions that we're in, but like I said, we got Westlake Drive coming up, and then I'll be terminating and energizing, and we'll run that sometime between July and October. That second phase of Long Lake that we acquired from Wild Rice Electric, that'll come in this year. She's got the South Washington Avenue streetlights to contend with, County Highway 54 and Highway 10 signal lights, and some more streetlights on Highway 10. Possibly still some work in that alley behind Midtown when they do South Washington Avenue. We've got some structures we need to set for Minnesota Energy and Resources for their gateways for AMI and AMR for those. They're starting the installs for AMI, automatic meter reading, automated meter infrastructure this year as well. Long Pine Estates is having some new development in that area. J. Sherman subdivision, Lakeview Storage will probably be coming down the pipe, and then the police department and transformer and some work in that area to facilitate the police department. So we've got a lot of work, and unfortunately, a lot of it starting after July 1. So it's going to be a mad thrash from July to Thanksgiving here for sure for the crews. Did I miss anything, Andy?
Yeah, my list is longer than yours, but I'm not going to show it to you yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Does it cause you any, does it slow things down to have your crews split? And then how long do you think you have to keep those crews split?
We're still getting jobs done. We're still wrapping up stuff that's left over from before. And then the guys are using a lot of the time to get our digital map straightened out and getting it usable. But yeah, it's working, I guess. I mean, it's not great, but I mean, it's working and everybody's staying busy and getting stuff done.
And staying healthy too, so.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Water, wastewater report.
Sorry, just had a little trouble finding the right mic. Everything's going good. The hogs are doing all the grade work. They're subcutting where all the pavement goes and adding in the clean fill and the gravel there, getting that packed out. Fence crews are working on the back side of the plant right now. All the operations are going. Suez is here. We've been taking out some of the filters and running some checks on those things. Just observing a few of them, fixing a couple of the Z-weed noodles that are had a couple leaks on them. I guess there's almost thousands and thousands of noodles, and we're doing some of the air checks. They're seeing a couple of them leaking, so he said that's very normal. So yeah, we're just seeing some of that and working with him, learning a lot of new stuff. Staff staying busy. We're still doing meter change outs, trying to schedule that stuff with people that are businesses that aren't operating, so they're at least getting that done so they're not affecting their shutdowns. Yeah, working on that. Other than that, we're just staying busy. That's it.
Any questions?
If I can just chime in a little bit on, you mentioned Suez is on site for performance testing. They're doing some function checks and operational changes before they start doing the actual performance testing. That's a requirement of the contract. They have to prove that their system will meet the regulatory requirements of 0.06 milligrams per liter at full capacity. So once they get things refined, they will have to do that do the performance test on that. That's 14 days long, and certify that their system will meet the requirements of the MPCA. And that was a critical component we put in the contract with them. So that's why they're back on site. They're probably going to be here a month, maybe 6 weeks, getting all that sorted out. But it's a critical part of getting our system buttoned up.
And I was curious for my predecessor, Gary, where are we coming with the pond to the west? Are they filling that, or where are we at with it?
They have most of the water pumped out. Yeah, they should be getting in there and pushing up the sludge onto the sides and letting that dry then. So I know they've been staging a lot of sand out there for filling it. Yeah, I think they're going to be hauling sand for a while. It's a lot of.
I'll have to go take video of that when they're doing it for Gary's.
Yeah.
It is really amazing how the whole landscape has changed out there. It does not look like the same place either to the east or the west.
I agree with that. You can kind of, way those trees came out of there and it all looks, it's really clean. I mean, taking down that old property building and all that, it'll be a lot better out there when it's all done.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good. All right, thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
And the one we've all been waiting for, City Engineer John Pratt.
How very kind of you, Mr. Simpson. I'll try to wow you. I do have a few things. I don't think I'm going to do a very good job of wowing you with my first item. If the commission recalls, last fall we were discussing a water main leak under Highway 10 at the intersection of Summit Avenue. It's been a slow leaker. Thankfully, we've, knock on wood, made it this far without it getting any worse. We took bids sort of in a hurry last fall in an attempt to maybe address this before freeze up last year. Went out for bids, asked three contractors for bids, 2 submitted, Haug and R.L. Larson last fall. R.L. Larson came in at right around $175,000 for this repair. Haug came in at about $142,500. We said thanks, but no thanks. Felt like those were pretty high numbers given the time of the year. They still stand by that they were, but we went out again, took another shot at this. You can see the tabulation on your screen. We did do better, not quite as much as I had hoped. I was hoping for around 120,000 on this. But I think it's safe to say at this point, this is as good as it's going to get. We did put a hard timeline on this. We tried to allow the schedule to be flexible to fit this in. So I think we've done as good as we can to try to mitigate the costs in this. It's just kind of a nasty little project, frankly. So the low bid that we received this time around by a whopping $25 was Haug at just under $130,000. So I'm recommending that we award this contract to Haug, and we will get the work complete sometime over the course of the summer. It doesn't sound like they're going to hop on this right away. Probably be an August thing.
Any questions for John? we do need a motion to approve or not the bid.
Say, Jim?
Yep.
Yeah, Jim, I'm not gonna make a motion. I'm gonna abstain from this one just because of the involvement with MnDOT. So I'll just abstain on this one.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. Would you please note that in the minutes?
This is Tucker. I'll make a motion to approve it.
We have a
This
motion.
is Bolt. Bolt will second.
Motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Foltz,
Yes.
Sinclair,
Yes.
Tucker,
Yes.
Suki,
Yes.
and Perkins abstains. Motion carries.
Thank you. Anything else, John?
Maybe real quick, Mr. Chair, just a brief update. It's been a couple months. Keep the commission up to date on some of these projects that we have going on. We're going to see some construction starting to ramp up on various projects from last year. For example, Randolph Road, the crews will be up working on finishing that street. Nothing in the way of utility work remains on that, but we have some concrete work and paving. I expect that to be wrapped up in the next few weeks, hopefully. Related to that project, more of an informational thing. The traffic signals at 54 were bid by MnDOT, I think in March. Came in a little bit high, but not too terrible. Bottom line, looking at that work starting sometime mid-summer, which I think everybody, that's going to be a welcomed improvement with those signals out there. Westlake Drive, we already touched base on that one. West Avenue, kind of similar to Randolph. We've got some street work to finish there, really nothing in the way of utilities to finish. Expect that to be completed over the next, probably 5 or 6 weeks. And then that project will be wrapped up, but there will be some short-lived detours that'll have to be put back in place for some of that final paving work. Haven't heard, we've talked a lot about some different subdivisions, and some of these have stalled out, which isn't a huge surprise. The Berquist subdivision out by Long Lake, if you recall that one, I have not heard anything from that developer for quite some time now. So I suspect that there'll be no work done out there this year anyway. There is another subdivision. I think these are interesting just because it sort of, I think, solidifies our investment in some of these fringe areas with our infrastructure. But there's another subdivision that's being proposed for North Tower Road, right at the corner of North Tower Road and County Road 131 there, in that agricultural field. That's being proposed by, the name is escaping me right now, Bristlands. And I think they're still looking at doing that. Although last I knew, they were going to look at privately financing that. So it's a little bit different process than if the city financed it. But I think that one's still got some legs under it. So we may see some development starting up there. Like I said, I think that's just a little bit interesting now that we've got infrastructure up there, how that triggers some other growth. Other points to mention, Long Pine Estates, that is moving ahead. Best I can tell, we'll be asking the council for approval and authorization to bid the street utility portion of that project here this month, opening bids in June, building that this summer. And then the last large project here that we're finally rounding third and heading home on is South Washington Avenue, which will be the big infrastructure project for the summer, going from Willow Street down to close to the Pavilion. Full reconstruct of Washington Avenue, constructing a couple of mini roundabouts, which are going to be interesting, and some reverse or some back-in diagonal parking. So I'm doing my best to thoroughly confuse everybody in town. Not a ton of utility work with that project. The utilities on Washington were replaced in the mid-90s. They're in good shape. We're going to do about a block of forest with utility replacement, sewer and water and storm sewer. And then we'll also be doing some work in the alley along the west side of Washington as part of that. So going to cause a little disruption because of where it's at, but other than that, pretty straightforward. So those are the updates on that. A couple other points to mention. We shoved with the help of Public Works, we shoved a flow meter in the sanitary sewer main on Willow Street. And I bring that up just because that is going to be some really useful information in determining what, if anything, we need to do with the sanitary sewer on Willow going west of Washington Avenue. That project's on the docket for next year, and we're sort of contemplating whether or not we're going to need to do anything with that sewer main in terms of upsizing it or not. And so that data is going to be very, very interesting. Could have some big impacts depending on what we find there. And lastly, next month, we hope to be bringing you the final version or a presentation on the master water distribution master plan. And we'll hope to give the commission a short presentation next month on that. So that is it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John? Then we will, is there any other department reports for now?
Yeah, Mr. President, if I can, I'd like to have Bridget jump in here and give us an update on her key accounts program. She's been reaching out to a lot of our large commercial customers, and she can kind of talk about their status and what their plans are and how they're doing through this.
Yeah, so I've been trying to keep in close contact with our main key accounts, and I have reached out, or 6 of them have actually reached back out to us to kind of fill us in on where they're at. So I'll go through that list really quickly. BTD is currently about 50% right now. They're just running about half of their staff, and they are hoping that they will be full staff by June 1st. That is their goal. The community center had reached out. Of course, they're still closed, and they're just, monitoring everything with the governor, and they'll remain closed until further notice. Ecumen is still doing their job. They are remaining, they're just, serving their customers 24/7. Team Industries, when this all started, Team had scaled way back. But as of April 20th, they had kind of ramped up their production again, but they are working a Monday through Thursday schedule with 2 different shifts. And then they also have 2 planned shutdowns. So they have a 1-week shutdown, which is May 25th through the 29th. So they will be doing thorough cleaning and going through everything, trying to keep their employees safe. And then they have a 2-week shutdown, June 22nd through July 3rd. So they have 2 planned shutdowns. Welding has been business as usual. Nothing has changed. And then Lake Shirts reached out yesterday, and right now they have 70% of their employees that are furloughed. So that's quite a number. So 70% of their staff is not working right now. And they're hoping that next week they can add just a couple hours, but they're really, it's all dependent on travel and colleges and places opening up. So once things start opening up, then they are able to start moving products again. But right now it's very stagnant. It's not happening. And that's about all they could give us. They're really unsure about things. It just depends on, what we do nationwide for them and what the colleges and schools do. So they do not see themselves ramping back up anytime soon as of right now. And then their employees that are there are working just part-time hours. So they have very few full-time staff actually working in Lake Shirts right now. And that's all I have.
That's good information. Bad to hear on some of those things, but leaves a lot of questions. Thank you, Bridget.
You're welcome.
Kelsey.
Commissioners, just maybe a quick update on the airport project. Of course, this summer is kind of the biggest phase of the project, and that will really get started in earnest the last week in May is when they'll do the runway closure. So the main runway will be closed for a period of 60 days or not to exceed 60 days. The grass runway will stay open except for maybe a day or two. So it'll provide some service to those people that are flying in and out. We also did a bid opening, and the airport commission on the 20th will consider bids for our fencing project, which is kind of the fourth phase of this project. That came in about that project or the engineer's estimates at about $1.4 million. I never thought I would do a fencing project for $1.4 million, but that's what it is. The good news is, if there's any good news about the COVID-19 situation, is the FAA is going to make the 2020 grants 100% grant. So there's going to be no local match on those 2020 grants. So between the supplemental funding we got in 2019, that was 100% grant, and this year that's 100% grant. We're doing pretty good on the project budget. So you'll see a lot of activity over there over the next few weeks as HOG is mobilizing, and then again the runway shutdown will be that last week of May for 60 days, and you'll see them paving the south extension. The approach lighting system will go in, and then the total reconstruct of the main runway. Police department, we have a pre-con meeting this Thursday. Working on getting the contract put together with the contractor. We got to issue that contract and a notice proceed, hopefully have that ready for Thursday. And you could see activity starting there within the next couple of weeks on that site for the police department. I guess just other operational issues at City Hall. We're continuing to do a split scheduling at least through this week. We've kind of said we continue to do these Zoom meetings and working remotely as much as we can, as long as the governor's stay-at-home orders in place. And of course, that stays in effect through May 18th or up to May 18th. Again, we're kind of all waiting and watching what the governor does this week, if he extends that stay-at-home order, what type of modifications he makes to it. I think the only other thing I was going to mention from a public utility standpoint, it might tie into a little bit of that strategic planning too, is it's been on my to-do list this summer. We probably need to take another aggressive look at our capital improvement plan. I think John's on the call, and him and I have talked about this too. Every year, obviously, we try to do that, and every year it changes. I mean, even the best plans change, but I think we're getting to the point with some of the costs coming in higher on some of these projects. We just probably need to do a deeper dive into that capital improvement plan. Hopefully we can still do that this year and try to update that document and put a financing plan in place. And with Heidi being on, I think it'd be a good exercise too for her to be part of that. So I think that's it, President.
Thank you, Kelsey. Brunel, anything to add there?
No, just moving on to the 2020 commission meeting dates. Our next one is scheduled for June 9th. Hopefully we can make that in some sort of a in-person meeting. Kelsey's been talking about how to reintroduce meetings back to the council. There's a possibility he may look at a different venue or something like that for it. We may go into the council chambers if we need to continue some type of social distancing. At least keep everybody away from each other a little bit more. But hopefully in June we can get back together and conduct business as usual. If not, we'll be seeing y'all by electronic methods again. And then just note the MMUA Summer Conference, that registration is starting to open up. Keep that in mind. I'm very, very hopeful that we can do that meeting in August. So give it some thought, see if that fits into your schedules, and let us know, and we'll get you signed up and registered for that. And then we'll play that one by ear as we progress here.
And Vernell, I think if I can cross the border, I may not be available in that June 9th meeting.
Okay.
At this point in time, I'd say that's unlikely, but we'll see.
Okay, but yeah, just let me know and we can have Vice Chair Tucker take care of the meeting for us.
Will do. Anything else to come before the meeting?
I have two questions. So MMUA Summer Conference, where is that, Vernell?
I believe it's at Cragen's this year.
Okay. All right. First. And then Kelsey, I apologize for having a thimble full of, a thimble full of knowledge when I need a bucket full. But I was on a call yesterday with the chamber in North Dakota, and they were talking about economic development grants that the state of North Dakota generally gets about $30 million in economic development grants. And this year they're thinking they're going to get over 300 million. And they were talking about using that money for some, economic development, but specifically for some school bonding around workforce and some other things. I only bring that up not because, and I don't know, you probably know way more of this than I am, but if they got 300 million, I believe Minnesota will get a boatload. But I don't know if that's available. I don't know if it's something that, is helpful to the city, not helpful. I only bring it up because I thought it was an interesting comment, and especially what they were going to do with it. And because they were talking about using it for a bunch of stuff with a career academy, and I know we're doing that in DL, and I know they're probably not going to have a lot of money. So I bring that up only because, just to say, you know more about than I do, or something we should check on.
Yeah, Commissioner Tucker, I don't know if I know too much about that economic development funding. I haven't heard anything about that. The hot topic at the Capitol is the state received a large appropriation from the federal government in this CARES funding, and how they distributed that out to the other local governments is really what's being debated right now. There's talk about distributing that on a per capita basis to counties and cities. The current Senate proposal is proposing an $87 per capita distribution, which for us would be a pretty significant sum of money. But I don't know if that's related to that economic development funding that North Dakota is talking about or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it sounded like this was federal money, but again, I didn't ask. I should have asked more questions. I just didn't. I kind of write notes and take it for what it's worth. Anyway, FYI.
If there's nothing else, I would close the meeting.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave, talk soon. Thank you.